With the second wave of COVID-19 in full swing, businesses around the world are struggling to their feet, weakened by closures caused by this serious pandemic. Museums have not been excused from the swathe of economic wreckage caused by the coronavirus, and just like so many other institutions, they are struggling to adapt to the new rules of 2020. Limiting occupancy in exhibits, encouraging the wearing of masks, and sanitizing public areas are a few of the different ways that businesses are trying to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus. Larger museums have been able to successfully adopt these practices and allow visitors back into their exhibits. However, smaller museums are affected in a far more drastic way, as they already have limited occupancy, and in a lot of cases, they don't even have the funding to reopen in the first place. Before we get into the meat of this video, I just want to go over a couple of statistics released by the International Council of Museums, based on an impact survey that they released back in May, just to judge how bad museums around the world were being affected by COVID. There were 1,600 responses from museums and museum professionals in 107 different countries. And from this data, ICOM was able to piece together a couple of statistics for us. According to the report, 1/3 of the institutions will have to downsize, and it is estimated that 1 in 10 will be forced to permanently close their doors. Other surveys done within national borders of a number of different countries suggest that far more institutions will have to close their doors. For example, the American Alliance of Museums is saying that as many as 30% of American museums will be forced to close. With all of this terrible news, there does come some positive though. ICOM reports that 84% of the staff that were working from home, and the employment sector seems comparatively stable. Many institutions have taken this time to up their social media presence and encourage digitization of their collections for greater accessibility to a world in lockdown. So we have all of these museums that are struggling to reopen over the last couple of months, and while many of them are still continuing to pay their staff, what are the ripple effects of these changes? Well, aside from the fact that some museums are having to shutter their doors for good, the rules around museums and the artifacts they contain are changing. In general, museum ethics are very strict when it comes to the de-accession of an object from the collection. Previously, it was nearly unthinkable for a museum to sell an artifact for monetary gain. But this being said, 2020 isn't short of surprises. According to the ICOM report, most museums around the world back in April were closed. With these closures, many museums took a hit to their budget. And while it seems like they were able to keep the staff on and keep paying people, the cost of looking after thousands of artifacts is steep. Most museums are severely underfunded, and as a result, they rely on the foot traffic to remain afloat. However, with the usual mass of visitors nowhere to be seen, some museums are resorting to practices that have previously been heavily frowned upon. Back in April, the Association of Art Museum Directors in the United States relaxed their de-accession policies with a resolution. The resolutions state that the Association of Art Museum Directors will refrain from censuring or sanctioning any museum, or censuring, suspending, or expelling any museum director that decides to use restricted endowment funds, trusts, or donations for general operating expenses. The resolution also addresses how a museum might use the proceeds from de-accessioned art to pay for expenses associated with the direct care of the collection. At the beginning of September, the Brooklyn Museum of Art found it necessary to send 12 paintings to auction at Christies in order to help fund the care of their collection. The Baltimore Museum of Art also recently put in an effort to sell 3 paintings, including Andy Warhol's Last Supper. Combined, these 3 paintings were worth tens of millions of dollars, although the sale was stopped at the last minute for some reason. But unfortunately, I'm afraid that Andy Warhol and the Brooklyn Museum of Art is just the beginning. And if you're wondering why this is such a big deal, keep in mind that it could be decades or even centuries before these pieces ever reach the public eye again. And who even knows if they'll even be looked after properly. If a painting hasn't been properly recorded and digitized, it could potentially be lost to the sands of time. With all of this doom and gloom, let's talk a little bit about digitization. Digitization, for those who aren't aware, is the act by which museums put their collection online so it's available to the greater public. This is more common with archival material and art as they transfer more readily to an online format. With the various lockdowns and quarantines going on in the world right now, a much wider variety of artifacts are showing up on the World Wide Web, which has definitely been a silver lining through this whole mess. Digitization is a big deal for a number of different reasons. Digitization provides detailed information about an artifact in the event that it's lost to an auction house or in case of some calamity. But more generally, digitization is really important as it makes it more accessible to people who can't always afford to go to a museum. Gatekeeping at museums and why I believe that museums should be free is another video that I have planned, however. So if you want to get a notification for that when it inevitably comes out, please consider subscribing. I saw a lot of people through lockdown tweeting and posting about how as soon as lockdown and quarantine was over, they were never going to take the aquarium or the museum for granted again, and they were going to go and visit. And I am begging you, please do it. Your museums right now are in critical mode as we are struggling to survive. I hope people flock to museums after being inside for so long. The desire to be surrounded by something bigger than ourselves can be really comforting in these trying times, as is the desire to be surrounded by objects that one might find beautiful or grand. Museums are generally underfunded, so please, if you're feeling safe and confident, grab a mask and go and visit your local spot. And hey, if you aren't comfortable with going to a museum in person, there's a lot that you can do to help support. Check out their online resources. A lot of places have an online gift shop now, especially with the holidays around the corner. Consider making a donation, but if, financial times are rough, honestly, just take a look through the online collections and just try and support on social media. Honestly, at this point, anything helps, guys.